Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network. Our show today is The Listening Mentor. Joining me is the Harley Street stress expert, my co-host and friend. Let's welcome Caroline HEWARD to the show. Hi, Caroline.
Hello.
Hi.
It's always lovely to be here on a Friday.
It's lovely to see you as well, and I certainly enjoy our banter and our dialogue here on this show. We have really authentic and genuine conversations, and hopefully people watching or listening are getting some value from it as well.
Thank you. Thank you. It really means a lot to be here.
And Caroline, before we begin, I'm going to spotlight you for people joining us for the very first time, whether they're listening or watching. Please give our audience a little bit of background about how you work with people and help them.
I've been working with the chakra psychology system for 22 years now, and essentially I help anybody, everybody that suffers with any type of stress, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or behavioral, whether it affects your relationships, your family, your finances, your home, your feeling of being able to cope with situations like bereavement. And it's whatever you're complaining about, and essentially I work with root cause. So you tell me what's not working, what's causing you your stress, whether you're not sleeping, physical ache and pain, or emotional pain, and I identify the root cause. The pain will literally clear and you will feel incredible. You'll release emotion and you will feel amazing. The process is incredibly simple and yet effective. I offer a free consultation, whether it be Zoom or Skype, because we're in different time zones, and all you need to do is reach out on email, my email address, which is NoMoreStress@live.co.uk. The details are on the banner, and then we can plan and book in your free consultation and literally bust your stress.
Thanks, Caroline. Much appreciated. I shared with you backstage that yesterday on my Talking Heads episode, I was reviewing how to avoid an argument. And in this world today, there are so many issues that people are fighting about, so much anger. And what I have seen happening is that people are not able to express themselves, and the anger manifests, and it shows itself in many ways, whether it's sleep deprivation, whether it's a loss of your hair, whatever it is that's showing up for you in your body. So what if we just decided we're not going to argue with other people? Can you imagine what kind of concept this would be?
We'd have world peace, I am sure. That's one of my missions in life.
You know, I have this same with you, inner peace and world peace. And yet people in general are ready to jump on you. Anything that you say that doesn't jive with them, for some reason, their opinion is more important than the other person's opinion. What are your thoughts on this?
This is when we get into a place of fighting for our right and our ego. And so when we're fighting for our right to be heard, then we step into the place of overstepping somebody else's boundaries, which causes problems. And it's important to acknowledge that you're doing that, because when you do step in and over somebody's boundaries, it not only causes a friction for the other person, it also creates a friction for you, because if you're all over somebody else, then you're actually doing that to yourself, and so other people will do that back to you.
Thank you, Caroline. And what I discussed on the program is that typically somebody has to be right. And you were just alluding to this. It's about, this is my territory. It's like a dog claiming their area there. Why does someone have to be right and someone has to be wrong?
Well, this is the survival mechanism of Darwinianism, where it's the survival of the fittest. We're actually not in that age of the survival of the fittest anymore. We're all here to experience life. And when we go into that place of trying to justify and fight our corner to win, because if we win, the other person loses. We're all connected. And if we force someone into a wrong situation, or I'm right, you're wrong, nobody's right and nobody's wrong. Everybody is right and everybody is wrong. And nobody wins in that space. So it actually causes friction with you, because while you're fighting with the other person, interestingly enough, and this is not what's commonly or understood by most people, is that if you're fighting to be right, what happens is you're actually depleting your own energy. So the right and wrong game goes nowhere. It only depletes you and the other person, and nobody wins.
Exactly, I agree with you. And yet, how many times do we see this in interpersonal relationships where you see the dynamic, the two people are always arguing? They've been together for a million years, right? And they're still arguing. And it gets into a pattern where that becomes the norm. That's what they know.
Oh, I know quite a few couples that are like that. And, sort of, I call it the right and wrong game, or the shame and blame game, and it is a game. And it's because what we're actually doing, because we've never been taught, we're actually stealing energy from the other person, because we've never been taught that everything is energy. And because we're making the other person wrong, we're stealing their energy so we feel better and we feel more in control. And when that happens, it it actually depletes your energy as well as the other person. But more to the point, it's not a great way to live, because you're always justifying and in an internal battle. Because if you're in a battle with someone in the external, you're actually in an internal battle in your own world. And the way to create a greater inner peace with yourself is to be at peace internally, and then your external world will become more peaceful. I know this is a bit deep, and I'm sorry, but actually it's what I want to do is actually say it's just so much deeper than being right and wrong. It's about how we choose to live our lives. And if we're always in battle, we're actually turning the knife on ourselves and in battle with ourselves, which ultimately is the ultimate knife wound to ourselves.
Well stated. Caroline, have you seen where couples are arguing and one has to be right, one has to be wrong, and the relationship is no longer a priority? It's a priority of, look at me. I'm the one who's more important. I'm more important than you. And while they say they're working on the relationship, they're really showing that they need to work on themselves, but yet not seeing it.
This is very deep. This is what I call the mirror. Everything is your mirror. So if there is something that's not working in your world, especially if you're in a relationship, everything will show up in your relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship or whether it's your family or a very close friendship. Everything will appear, and whatever is not working for you will appear in those external relationships. And so when we are in a close and an intimate relationship, there's like more of a battlefield, because your stuff comes up and it's there for you to see in all its glory. And we don't, as humans, like to see that stuff appearing right in front of us, because it makes us feel uncomfortable. And so the humanism of us makes the other person wrong, and makes us on some level, some ego level, feel better. But we don't feel better. There's like a game of survival that pushes us into that space. And if you have done some work, some coaching, if you have been to see therapists or done some work on yourself, these concepts will have some level of semblance of understanding, because we're not taught in school. But some of us that have done some training, that have been in some level of trauma or looking for other types of growth rather than the normal career growth and education, have explored these concepts. And when you realize that everything is really self, we call it looking at your shadow, working with your own shadow, that everything is you. And whatever you're complaining about is really you. And so you actually then are the controller of your ship. You have everything. You have the control to change it. And that's what makes it really beautiful, when you realize you can control what's not working by the way you respond to others and yourself. And you can make yourself in a better place in terms of the way that you experience life and the way that others experience life around you.
Yes, I agree with you. And something I shared also on the Talking Heads episode is certain things people do trigger us, and they know they trigger us. They know how to get us going and losing control of our emotions. So I invite everyone to take a step back and not take the carrot, not take the bait, not lose control of yourself and get into that spiraling down pattern of behavior between you and the other person. And I know, just in speaking to people, that it's hard for someone who's been out of control to get themselves back in control, because they constantly have that desire to have the last word, to be the one who's right. And none of that really adds any value, because what happens is the relationship is suffering. It's like beating something to death. If you just imagine taking a club and you hit something over and over and over again, what ends up happening? You're exhausted and everything is broken up. So, what would you say to someone who has a hard time getting control of their emotions and constantly takes the bait?
This is really simple. It's to step into a place of observation, to move into a place of literally becoming your own witness. When you witness how you are responding, almost like watching a movie, when you watch a movie and you can see everything. When you go into that space, when you step into a space of witnessing what is going on around you and witnessing yourself in that performance, because it is a performance, you step into a role. And you can, when you see yourself doing it and you can see how you're suffering, you can then make a choice. And this is the key. When you step into a place of observing yourself or becoming your own witness, you can choose to respond and react in a different way, or to not react, or to not respond, or to observe without feeling the need to get in there and respond, because your response and reaction is yours. And that's the bit that hurts you. The other person is completely oblivious. They're in their stuff and you're in yours. But the only way that you can move into a space of inner peace and a space where you have more control is if you manage your responses and your reactions. It's 90%, it's 10% of actually what happens and 90% of how you respond and react.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to add to that, when there's an opportunity to lose control versus stay in control, when you're in control and you're in control of your emotions and you walk away from that situation, it's so empowering, because instead of going down that rabbit hole that's going to get nowhere. We've seen this over and over again. Two people are in an argument and they start talking louder and louder and louder, jumping up and down like a child. What is that going to do to help you be heard, help the other person be heard? And you get pains in your chest, you start sweating, and it just becomes like you're almost in a wrestling match or in a boxing match, and you're going at each other. And this is someone you either care about or you don't care about, you don't know, but wherever you're taking this, you are responsible for that. If the other person, you've seen this too, someone gets completely, excuse me, crying, hysterical, screaming, yelling, and you take a step back and just observe, and you think to yourself, wow, that's been me. That doesn't look good. That doesn't look pretty. That's not healthy. It doesn't feel good. And then you snap out of it and say, wow, I need to do something to work on my own behavior. No judgment on the other person, just we don't want to be like that.
When somebody does get like that, they get caught up in that whole drama of the response. And in some training that I did, we called it a creation. And the creation is ours. It's beautiful. And if you observe your creation, you know, all of its finite detail, you know, we create a cold. We create, you know, sort of a situation where we're in a conflict, and it's our creation. And when you stand back and observe it from that place of being the witness, you can admire it. Say, hey, I did that and I created this. And I remember, you know, I remember having a really bad cold. I was in Florida actually at the time in my training. And I had this cough and a cold and a streamy nose and just feeling really miserable. And there were 12, 14-hour days. And so that they were saying that this was my creation, and this is, you know, I'm feeling this cold, and this is, you know, well, have a look at it, go and explore that cold. You know, it's got a cough, so go and exaggerate the cough. You know, you're sneezing, go and exaggerate the sneeze. And you know, your eyes are streaming, go and exaggerate it. And so I had to exaggerate all those different elements, and it became my own sitcom. And then I started laughing and the cold disappeared pretty quickly. So it's, we are creating these experiences to the level we're creating them. And I know that sounds a little bit hard to take, but when we don't respond and react, those situations almost calm down. You know, what we've got at the moment in the external world, you know, I think in a global way at the moment, we have interest rates going up, we have the economics becoming crazy at the moment, the world weather is going a little bit crazy, all sorts of things are happening. The politicians are, you know, there's all sorts of craziness going on in the world of politics, and you can get really caught up. Now all that is going on, and I'm here in a really calm space in, you know, what I would say is a very deep meditational space at home. Yes, we've got to look after the practicals, but I could be screaming and tearing my hair out rather than renegotiating, you know, my mortgage, doing something practical without getting hysterical, and, you know, watching what I'm spending. And so it is about how we're responding. Yes, the external world, the stuff going on, but it is about how we respond and react to create our own inner peace and our own state of mental health.
Really good points, Caroline. Thank you. And we're going to take a look at a role play that I directed with Mariska Duprie from New Zealand. And this is a role play of something that has actually happened to me several times. And I want to have a chat about it afterwards. So let's take a look. It's at the gym.
Hey, how are you? I haven't heard from you in ages.
What?
Yes, it's wonderful. We need to catch up.
Excuse me.
Hold on 10 seconds.
Excuse me. There's no cell phone usage at the gym. Do you see the sign?
You know what? This. I'll need to phone you back. Bye. What?
That is so rude. You don't see the sign? I'm trying to work out here.
What sign are you talking about?
You have to be aware of your environment. Look behind you. Look at the sign. See, it says no cell phones.
Oh, I missed that.
I was on the treadmill in my chair.
I love it. I love it.
With the long earrings. I love it too. So this has actually happened to me. And recently, I want to say 3 or 4 times, I'm on a piece of equipment at the gym. There's a sign. It's right in front of us. It's not actually behind us. And there's somebody next to me who makes a phone call or gets a phone call. And they're talking about their business deal in the loudest tone possible. I'm now in their business deal. I now have some information that I probably shouldn't be having. And so it's that part of, what do you do? Do you confront the person? So of course, when this happened the first time, I did confront the person, and it didn't go too well because the guy started making fun of me to the person with whom he was speaking on the phone. Oh, I've got this woman over here and she's pointing to a sign and he just kept carrying on his conversation about the business. And I got off the machine. I was stewing. I was fuming. And I thought, I'm going to go tell the manager. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then I thought, what am I doing? So it's happened 2 or 3 more times with different guys. And I have decided I just get off the machine and I go work out somewhere else because it's not worth it for me. But we become so unaware of our surroundings and people are so ready to jump into an argument with you. It's prolific. It's all over the place, especially with the speakerphone.
Well, you've just described exactly what I'm talking about you getting angry, upset, that affects your experience on the machine. And the other person just going, hey, I've got this woman here that's, sort of, taking, and so you've become part of their conversation. And he's just joking about it because he's finding it humorous. Inside, so he's having a joke about it and, finding it really hilarious and sharing it with the person he's speaking to louder than ever. And you're the one that's getting angry. And that's an exact depiction of what happens. How we respond creates the experiences. Now, I really respect the fact that you did say something, because I do. And I have this little thing, when I'm on a train, because sometimes they can be really loud, and I kind of put my hand like this and I just do that, rather than say anything, because I'm really in full flow. I just kind of raise my hand and, to get them to lower their voice. And, sometimes they actually do lower their voice and other times they go louder, so then we have a choice, and my choice is either to sit there and put up and shut up, or to go into another carriage and, be away from it. And I feel that it's that that people are continuing to conduct their lives on the phone and actually probably not aware, because they're so involved in the call, they're not aware and they're not in the observation of how that looks externally. And so they don't really realize how much they are talking loudly, how much they're shouting, because they're so involved in the call. Now, when I was growing up, there was no mobile phones. And so we didn't conduct business like that. And business was very confidential and it was really private and it was in the office. We very rarely ever took our work home because we just didn't, we didn't have computers, so we didn't take the work home. That was talking about a long time ago. And so we are now in an age where these kind of things have an impact and an effect. And it is about how we're all responding. And I've responded in different ways, by not saying anything, by just, lowering my hand to get them to talk quietly. And then I've also turned around and said, can you calm down your voice? It's really loud. It's very distracting. And I've also been turned on. So I have to be, I'm mindful of how I'm responding. And as you did, I've moved too, because I don't want to get upset and angry in a train, that's crowded. It becomes very unmanageable.
Yes, and I want to add to that, and I hate to even say this, but in this world, you never know who's going to turn to violence, who's going to switch, like it snap like this because of something you said or did. So it doesn't make sense. I don't think it's safe to even engage at any level. It used to be when I was in my corporate world very early on, and I had to drive to see all these clients, and people would cut me off, and I'd follow them. I found them blowing my horn. Like, I'm embarrassed to say this, but decades ago, I actually followed someone to their home. I actually drove to their home. And when they got out of the car, I said, what do you think you're doing cutting me off like that? And later I thought to myself, hello, you really have issues, because that is so foolish. I remember it was in the 90s. So my point is, we have to be very aware of our environment. And we also have to be the person who puts a stop to it escalating any further. So if someone does cut you off, Imagine they have somewhere they have to be, they have to go to the hospital to see someone, or there's some kind of emergency they have to get to, and just get out of their way instead of letting it take you over. Or something else, you're at a traffic light and someone has their radio blaring, it's some kind of music that you can't stand. You're getting a headache from it. Don't say anything. Just roll up your window and continue on your way, because it doesn't pay to engage. And it's like, if you see a little kindling starting to burn and then you blow on it, or you add more fuel to the, and then you have this huge fire. That's what we're doing by engaging. So I think when it comes to stepping away from being involved in an argument, realize what's triggering you. Take a deep breath and, like, maybe seriously even step back and get a hold of yourself and just say to yourself, is it really worth it for me to engage? Like, for example, two strangers, you see this a lot. Somebody pulls out a gun and kills the other person over some issue that was so minor.
It's a good word, trigger. And trigger belongs in the world of therapy and counseling, because it's our triggers. These things are going on, and it's how we respond to that trigger. And if it becomes a trigger, trigger is the word when you're at trigger point, you're at the point end of the gun where somebody's just about to click the gun. And it's, what do we do? Do we scream out? Do we say, hey, that's not right? Because what might not be right for us is probably perfectly right for the other person. And it's perfectly okay for them to behave like that, because they've always behaved like that. So let me give you an example. A family, a child that's always got their own way, what we might call in England the British brat, the one that's, essentially been given everything that she wants and been given all the money for everything she needs, and everything's been a money thing. When the British child grows up, she's used to having her own way. And so if she's always had her own way, what will happen is that when she's in any relationships, whether it be work, intimate relationships, or with family, she will just expect to have her own way. And so if she doesn't get her own way, there will be a trigger point. Now, I know it sounds a little bit crazy. A lot of these experiences of behaviors begin when we're very young. And if we're used to getting our own way and we stomp and stamp and then we get our own way, in later life when we get older, we'll continue these behaviors because they're usually formed in the very early years. And so if we've always stomped and stamped and got our own way, then we take that behavior into our adulthood. And I can see, I've seen some children being really, sort of in a tantrum in a supermarket, and they sort of rolling around on the floor, and because they want something, and then the mother says okay, and so that's then teaching the child, well, if I do this, if I stamp and stomp my feet, and if I create a tantrum, I'm going to get what I want. And this carries on into the adulthood. So these behaviors they get formed at a very early age, and we don't realize it. We just think that's the way that it is. But when you come across these unusual behaviors and you respond back, then you don't know what you're going to land up with. Trigger is exactly that. It's our own personal trigger. What's yours is not the other person's.
And the fallout can be debilitating.
This is how you get domestic abuse. This is how things can seem very innocent and can escalate, because we don't know the representation of what the other person is taking it down to, what they're experiencing, because we see everything through our own filters. Because everything really is you. I know it sounds a little bit kind of far out there, and actually everything is you in terms of the response and the reaction. And we can diffuse something by literally not responding, not being rude, not being antagonistic, not kind of sending the person in a silent journey, but actually deciding that we offer them compassion. And when we offer them compassion and kindness, it's amazing how that will affect the other person. Even if their language is not the same as yours, it's incredible, to create a smile in the other person, how that can diffuse a situation. What you're describing is somebody with anger management issues, and that anger management came from somewhere, and they're going to find whatever situation they're in, there'll always be somebody that they'll be angry at. And when they're angry at you, it's how you respond to that angry approach, or whether you just listen. And sometimes I find, and we are in the listening mentor, when you listen, when you literally simply listen to all of their grievances without needing to be right or making them wrong or one-upmanship or trying to do them down, when you're literally honoring them by truly listening with all of your sensories, that's all of you listening to all of them, something incredible happens. They become calm. It's most fascinating to observe and to be in. And I can't share too much because it's quite, sort of, I do it regularly all the time, with clients, with family. And it's amazing the impact and the effect when you truly listen in kindness, in compassion. When we give loving kindness and compassion to others, we're actually giving it to ourselves.
A perfect example I can think of is, and maybe this has happened to you, you're on a flight somewhere and there is a newborn child and you're at the gate area and like, please let me not be sitting next to this person and their baby. Please let it not be me. And then, of course, it is you. It is you sitting next to them. And you can see people all around you. They're turning around. They're going, oh, making comments. And what I do is I just smile at the baby or wave, and I smile at the parent, because imagine what that parent's going through. They know their child's screaming. And why is the child screaming? What is it that they need that they're not getting? And it's almost like everyone else feels like they're being punished. And they're not being punished. It's a baby. Babies cry. That's what they do. And they're in a different environment. And the parent or the caretaker, whomever it is, they have the pressure of calming that baby down. So I say, is it pleasant? No. Does it start to hurt your ears? Yes. But I just close my eyes and I just imagine I'm somewhere else on a beach or maybe on a sailboat or something. And it really does help. And so I think you should be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And that starts by leading with compassion and empathy, as you were saying.
It's quite surprising how often that happens, and the child is in distress. It's absolutely in distress. They either are very tired, or they need feeding, or they're not comfortable in the environment. There's something that's going on with the baby that is totally not okay. And to offer a space of compassion from your heart, I frequently go up, and say, "Oh dear, what a noise!" And so, "Oh gosh, such a little thing, and all that noise." And the amount of times that sort of I get a smile from a baby or a very young child, is quite extraordinary. And I've had some mothers turn around and say, "What did you do?" Because then the child suddenly shuts up. And it's just because maybe it's the vibration, the frequency that I'm at. They go, "Oh my gosh, what a lot of noise from a small person," and they're suddenly then engaged in a different way, and something's taken their attention away. And sometimes they just want a bag of sweets, and something, because they're not having the attention that they want. It could be very small, or it could be that they're just tired and they need to sleep and they're overtired. Whatever it is, they're actually crying because they need something. They need something restored and something that they're uncomfortable about. But yes, I do feel very sorry for the parents that are having to handle that situation. And I always remember this: we were all born as a baby.
Yes, we were. And
We were
Caroline,
all
what I want you to think about, and our audience to think about, is that baby is now 40 years old and demonstrating the same behavior, screaming, yelling, moving their arms around, flailing around, getting everyone to look at them because they need the attention. But that's not the kind of attention that is healthy. That is negative attention. And to your point, there's something going on in us that we're reacting that way. It could be a deep hurt. It could be a deep fear. There's many things, but I would say all of those things, and I'd love to have you weigh in on this, are something that is at a lower vibration. It's not a positive energy, it's a negative energy, and it comes out, it manifests itself in ways that show that we're out of control.
I couldn't have summed it up better myself. That's absolutely right. And it's a great example that we're still really the baby inside, and we're still struggling in how to express that we're not happy about something. And it is us, and we are the ones that are in control. And it isn't comfortable. It's very uncomfortable, not only for the other person that's experiencing you responding that way, it's also uncomfortable for you too, because you're suffering. It's not everybody else, because everybody else can leave your space. You're suffering. And what it does is it does lower your frequency. Everything is energy and everything is frequency. That was proven by Einstein. And so if we take that on board, that everything is frequency, anger, sadness, loneliness, all those are very low vibrational frequencies. But when we move into a space of kindness, compassion, and gratitude and joy, we're in elevated emotions. We're in the heart chakra, so we're right here, and we can actually affect our environments and others around us by being in those higher frequencies and higher vibrational experiences. And so we can literally turn a negative situation into a positive experience, not only for the other person, actually for ourselves too.
And we certainly need more of that. That is for sure. So, my last question to you is, a couple comes to you and he says, she won't stop yelling at me. And she says he never listens to me. And now they start having an argument right in front of you. They're literally arguing right there in front of you in your office. How do you handle that?
When the person is yelling, they are yelling, literally speaking louder because they don't feel heard. So I would ask, what is it that you don't feel is being heard? Because when the person is raising their voice and yelling, it's because they don't feel they're being listened to. And this is the listening mentor. It's a perfect example of, this is what we do when we're not feeling that somebody is hearing us or listening to us or acting on what we want. And so I would approach the person that is doing the yelling to say, what is it that you want him to hear? And ask the person that has been yelled at to listen and to observe their own response. Because when they go into a listening space and when they're yelling at each other, that actually neither of them are listening to each other. So I would start with the first person that started yelling, because they clearly have something that they want listened to. There's something that they want to be heard.
And do they calm down or do they continue at it?
Well, yes, they would calm down, because there's like a third person in between to say, well, hang on a minute, you're yelling about something, and that makes the other person that's doing the yelling back calm down, because then there's an interjection. When you leave two people to row, they will, do the tennis match. But when you go in the middle and say, so what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you want to express? What is it you want to express? What is it that you don't feel? And so you use the two and you mediate between the two people, so that being in the middle of that, it's not ideal, being in the middle of that. And this is what mediators do, and it doesn't work if the person in the middle is actually becoming part of the argument. It's part of the collusion. It is about separating and being out of the collusion and finding out why the ranting and the yelling is happening. And so to organize some semblance of disconnecting the behavior and looking at why the behavior has become the behavior.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I think there's a lot of great insights there. And I also think when it comes to arguing, and I think there's an expression, I forget what it is. People will bring up something that's already been discussed, resolved, allegedly, and they throw it in your face. 15 years ago, Caroline, you told me XYZ PDQ, and now we're supposed to talk about something that happened 15 years ago. But people do this on a regular basis and they're stuck in the past. And it's kind of like, obviously, it wasn't resolved for you in the past, or you know that it's going to hurt the other person. I can remember I said to one of the guys that I was seeing, I remember 5 years ago, you were flirting with the waitress when we were on a trip. Who cares? Who cares? What are you supposed to do with that information now, 5 years later? Should we go track the waitress down and ask her if this is actually true? But we do things like this all of the time. What is that about?
When somebody's bringing up stuff from the past, it's because there's something going on in their mind. They're actually turning it around in their mind. So for them, they're still in that situation as if it happened only yesterday or a few hours ago. And I'll liken it to an example of, have you ever met somebody that's been a good friend and they're talking about a breakdown in a relationship and they're crying and they're being really emotional and they're kind of saying, he did this and I did that. And then when you find out how long ago it was, they split up about 10 years ago and they're talking about an ending to a relationship that happened over a decade ago. And that's because in their mind, they're still in the relationship. And that's the key. So they're not living in the present moment. They're living in their mind. And when you're in your mind, you can have a whole scenario going on up there. You're in a whole movie, a soap opera, and you're the main movie star. And everyone else is oblivious to what's going on in your mind. And it's not real. When you're going round and round the houses in your mind about something and bringing up something that happened 15 years ago, it's very real to the person because they are analyzing in their mind. But when they move from head to heart, then they become present and in the moment that they're in. And so my invitation is to reach out and almost give them a hug, to get them to disconnect with the mind and to reconnect with their heart. Because if something happened 15 years ago, they're only going around it in their head because there's something that makes them, want to suffer. And I only offer compassion. If somebody keeps bringing up something that happened 10 or 15 years ago, that's their stuff. It's not yours.
I agree. And I also think sometimes people demonstrate this type of behavior because they want to start an argument. And they want to start an argument because there's various reasons. I know that I would do it because I didn't want to be with that person anymore. And I didn't have the nerve to tell them. So I would just start arguments with them to hopefully they would leave me.
Strategies. These are great strategies, and I had a friend, it was a long time ago, and she was in a relationship and she worked away a lot. And she found out that he'd actually was in had a tryst with, somebody that she knew in the same organization. And so essentially, she found out that they'd spent the weekend together and she was very upset. And so they split up. And every time she wanted to get angry, she thought about them together. And she got angry. And when she would share it with me, I could hear the anger coming up. I said, "You're getting angry. Why is that?" She said, "Well, it gives me energy. So I just think of them two together and then I get angry and then I've got energy again." And I says, "Well, that's not a great way to be. If you want to get energy, then, there are kinder ways to you to get it." And so, yes, it is a strategy. And I have heard people pick an argument or think about something that makes them angry, and then somewhere or another, they get their energy and then they can keep going again. But it's a negative energy which doesn't fuel you in the right way. It actually creates an imbalance and anger. And there's a cliche that says, don't vent your spleen. It actually affects the spleen. It affects your organs in your body when you're angry, and it affects you in terms of your experience in life.
Thanks for sharing that story. I think also when people are demonstrating these behaviors, I know someone said to me, "You really love drama." And I really didn't know what they were talking about until, a couple of years later, and this is going back years. But it's true. We get caught up in the drama, and that's the way that we live. And the drama is always being at odds with somebody or another. People like this, they're constantly angry at somebody. It just switches. Just take it from here, put it over here, put it over there, because they're really angry with themselves for some reason. But they don't want to do the work. They can't see the work. They need to hire you. They need to reach out and say, listen, I need some help. I have all these issues with my body and all these feelings of anxiety and fear. And it's because of him. It's because of her. No, it's not because of him or her. It's because of you and how you're responding.
When somebody calls me, when I get a consultation call in, a free consultation call, and they call me by phone, and they spend 10 minutes complaining about him or her and say, oh, well, she doesn't do this and she doesn't do that, and she's always on at me. After that 10 minutes, I just say, well, people give me feedback in 3 different ways. They're either complaining about the other person, and that's really telling me it's all about you. There's a lot you're telling me because you're putting it out there that it's your partner, but actually this is really you. And I've had some people go, how do you know that? And then the other type of person will say, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I don't feel very great. So it's either he makes me feel like this, he makes me do this, he makes me angry, or I feel angry, I feel upset. So that's 2 different ways. Or the third type of person will say, well, I've done some work and I've been to see my counsellor, and they suggest that I have anger management issues, but now I don't know what to do with it. Now I know I've got anger management issues. I don't actually know what to do with it, because it's actually worse now I know. So it's the person that knows they have issues but doesn't know how to resolve them. So if somebody is complaining about someone, it's really their stuff. I know it's hard to take, and it really is. It's not until I started doing this work 2 decades ago, I found that, well, hang on a minute, he did do this to me, like he is wrong. We're doing it to ourselves. And when we're in a different vibration, when we're not in that space where we're complaining about somebody, and we're more content and happy in ourselves, that person that was causing us all of the friction somehow literally disappears. They just leave our space. And so you'll know if there's a lot of friction, because they'll still be in your space. Obviously in families, that's a different space, because, we're in our families to learn some things about ourselves, and to, we're on a journey through our family. I know that I'm doing the work that I do because of my family, not because anything was really terribly wrong, but because I learned some things in my family, and I chose to do some different things and chose a different way to live. That's not that anybody was right or wrong. That gave me choices. I saw one way and I thought, what, I'm going to look at another way to live. And so I've been very different. I'm different from my entire family. I have different challenges and different decisions in terms of the way that I choose to work and the way that I choose to live. I do a lot of my stuff in meditation, and essentially we become more of ourselves through growing through the challenges rather than becoming part of the challenge.
Amen to that. We're actually over our time, but we can go about 5 more minutes. So I'll share something else. Since the pandemic, and I've had this awakening, and I can look back over my life, how it used to be everyone thought, wow, you have such a great life. And I did have a great life in a lot of ways, but there was a lot of drama. And I don't have drama anymore. And I don't have drama, I believe, because I'm living in a different environment. I've changed and my relationships have changed. And I'm so much at peace that when I go out for a walk, it's the same place I've been walking for 40 years. I can actually remember, I used to run. I remember running the same path over and over again, so angry and so hurt at this one and that one. And sometimes it would be a different person, but it's the same thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And now I can actually go out and I just enjoy the weather and I just enjoy nature and I come up with really good ideas. But I didn't have the space for that because I was so involved in drama.
That's because you were in the mind, and in the working environment, it forces us to be in the mind rather than being in our sensory experiences. And so the battlefield is in the mind. And when there's no mind, when you're not analyzing and going backwards and forwards with he said, she said, and when you're not there, because you're working in a space where you're very comfortable and you enjoy it, then you're in your environment, your space, through your sensories. So it is wonderful. And you will enjoy, you'll see and experience different things, because when you were in your walks previously, you were in your walks in your mind. So you were still in the drama of the conversations and the activities of your work. I know
And
it sounds crazy, but
no, it
it's
doesn't. It sounds spot on. And I think it's also when we get into this what's it called, hamster runs on the wheel, when we get into that in our mind, the other person has no idea. They're off doing whatever it is that they're doing, and we're just stewing with this information over and over and over again, and it only hurts us. And that's when we feel unheard, and it keeps manifesting. So Caroline, I'd love for you, as we close out the show, if someone is in a relationship, whatever it is, it's personal, it's business, and they are constantly arguing with one specific person, does it make sense to take a step back and evaluate what it is that they need that they're not getting from themselves before they can get it from someone else, and that maybe the relationship isn't working?
sometimes we do that because we get something from it. And my question to the person that's staying in that conflict of a relationship is, what's your investment? What are you getting from staying there? Because if you're constantly in battle, in arguments, there is a reason that you are staying there. And when you find the reason that you're staying there, it might be security, it might be that they're the breadwinner, it might be that, you have children, it might, whatever the reason is, there's like a comfortability of you staying there, they're the devil kind of approach. And so that's the question I would ask: what is my investment to stay and experience and stay in this experience, in this relationship? Because when you realize what your investment is, then you can decide whether it's worth you staying there.
All right, food for thought.
Woohoo.
So,
It's been a real one tonight, hasn't it? Whoa.
yes, it surely has. Well, thank you as always for being here and for just sharing such wonderful insights with me, as well as with our audience, our viewers, and our listeners. How can people reach out to you, and how can they get this 30-minute free stress buster?
You can reach out to me on No More Stress. That's the 3 words, No More Stress, at live.co.uk. If you have anything, relationship issues, physical or emotional pain, whatever it is that's not working in your life, reach out, and I offer a free consultation, either Zoom, Skype, or call, whatever's easiest for you. And we'll schedule that in a time that works for you and I. And I will literally help you bust your stress, recognize the patterns so that it doesn't keep happening, because it will feel challenging. And I want to help you so that you live in a much more inner peaceful state, how we were meant to be.
Thank you, Caroline. I wish you a beautiful evening there in the UK and a fabulous weekend.
You too. Take care. Have a
Take
wonderful
care.
weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you. Will I see you Sunday, by the way?
Yes, I'll be there
Okay.
Sunday.
I'll see you Sunday. Thank you. Bye. Well, viewers, listeners, friends of our channel, thank you so much. Especially people who watch this show. And of course, I don't know who all of you are on our various platforms, but it means a lot because I feel like you understand the importance of elevated listening and of looking at our own behavior instead of blaming other people. It all starts with us. For me, I think when I was married, I saw 5 marriage counselors, which in and of itself it tells me that there's a problem, right? I've been divorced since 1999, but I work with coaches all the time. I'm the first person to say, hey, I'd like to discuss this with you, business issue, personal issue, because I don't have all the answers, yet I'm interested. I'm curious. What can I learn? So I'll leave you with that. My invitation to you is, how can you be curious about who you are and about how you're showing up? And once you look at that, which believe me is not just a 5-minute thing, it's a lifelong thing. It's a lifelong journey. I'm still looking at myself every day. You will be amazed at how things in your life will start to change. And when you have the opportunity to abstain from a relationship, stay out of a relationship, abstain from a relationship that is a toxic one, you'll see how your life will change as well. So the next time someone dangles that carrot, that bait for you to get into an argument, think about what we discussed here today. Take a deep breath, take a step back, literally, and ask yourself, what value will I get by not engaging? It's literally empowering. That's the rest of our show for today. Thank you so much. If you'd like to be a guest on any of our shows, please go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, please do click subscribe and hit that bell so that you know all the 28 shows that we have, what the opportunities are for you to promote your business, your work, share your story. We're here for you. We provide a safe space for all around the world to come and share. Thank you again. I look forward to coming back with Pet Psychic Amina very shortly. We'll see you then.
By your love, what you giving me is just not enough. I need a love to take me higher.